Welcome to the Railroad Transportation Safety District meeting of September 12th, 2017. I'll call this meeting to order. And this meeting of the Lincoln Lancaster County Railroad Transportation Safety District, commonly referred to as the RTSD, is subject and adheres to the Nebraska Open Meetings Act. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection and is posted by the entrance to this room. As required by applicable law, on September 3rd, 2017, the notice and agenda of today's meeting and the budget summary were published in the Lincoln Journal-Star. The RTSD agenda and all the materials that are being considered at today's meeting were posted on the RTSD website on Wednesday, September 6th, 2017. The RTSD website is also accessible by links from both the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County official government sites. In addition, on August 28, 2017, the meeting agenda was posted on the bulletin board located in the City Hall, first floor, 555 South 10th Street. A copy of the agenda is also available at the entrance to this room. One copy of the meeting agenda and all materials being considered today are located at the dais, and complete copies of these materials are on file at the RTSD office at 949 West Bond Street, Suite 200. First order of business is approval of the minutes.
I move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Moved by Jane, seconded by Todd. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Brinkman?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Rabel?
Yes.
Wilchin?
Yes.
Okay, the second item is our statement of financial activity. Liz, welcome.
Good morning, Liz Stanel with Lancaster County Budget and Fiscal Office. So you have your FY18 Statement of Financial Activity in front of you. This is through the end of August 2017. So we have 2 months of activity here. And so far you have received $1.644 million of your $5.2 million in tax revenues. That $1.6 million represents the second half of your 2016 taxes at the 1.9. They were delinquent August 1st, so that's your second half of your 1.9 tax payment. You've received $13,112 of your $60,000 interest revenue. So you are at 32% of your revenue for the year. You have $1.657 million. In disbursements, we've spent $32,607 in commissions, $3,853 in operating costs, and we have spent $10,069,613 in construction project costs. That does include that $10 million payment that went to the City of Lincoln for the South Beltway. So as of August 31st, your ending cash balance is $660,059. You have an additional $10,535,022 in investments for a total fund balance of $11,195,081. And at the bottom of the sheet, it shows all the different investments that you have, totaling that $10,535,000. There's about $3 million in money market, and the rest of it is in CDs.
Okay, are there questions for Liz? Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to testify on this item?
Typically approve
Yeah,
the financial report.
we will do that after anybody else who wants to testify has an opportunity. All right. Seeing no one, I will entertain a motion to approve this report of financial activity.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Todd, seconded by Jane. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Christensen?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Rabel?
Yes.
Wilchin?
Yes.
Brinkman?
Yes.
Next, we have the review and consideration of the fiscal year 2017 audit.
Good morning. My name is Tony Chirina with HBE LLP. Here to present the what in front of you is a draft of the audit report. Your audit and financial statement is currently in the review stage, probably be reviewed next week. I do not expect any changes at all from what you are seeing here to the final draft. Looking at the financial report on pages 1 and 2 is the independent auditor's report. At the top of page 2 is the most important part of the report. We express an unmodified opinion. That means that, in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, respective financial position of the RTSD. We have no deviations from our standard opinion. On page 3 is the statement of net position for the RTSD. Total assets increased $3.7 million over the prior year. They are as of June 30th, they are presently $21 million approximately, and the bulk of that is cash, what we determine as cash, and that increased $3.2 million over the prior year. It is presently approximately $12 million. That number will decrease drastically in the coming year. So that'll probably be back down to what 2016 is at. On page 4 is the statement of activities. There is total expenses for the year of $795,000. That is down approximately $500,000 from the prior year. Most of that is due to a decrease in construction expenses. Your property taxes increased $900,000, which is almost entirely due to the increase in rate from the 1.16 cent to the 19 cent. That'll increase another $900,000 next year because of the increase from 19 to the 22.017, is that, or close? Another 3 cent increase. So that should increase about the same amount. Interest income increased from the prior year of $76,000 up to approximately $118,000. That will go down next year because obviously your cash and your investments are going to be going down due to the commitment for the South Beltway. Overall, the total general revenues for the RTSD increased about approximately $950,000. Pages 4, 5, and 6 are different versions of the balance sheet and the statement of activities that I discussed before. They are only slightly different because of the deferral of income of property taxes. Since it's a different measurement focus for these 2 pages of the financial statements, they don't include revenue or property taxes if you cannot collect them within 60 days after your year end. So there's approximately $178,000 that we did not record as revenue on these couple pages of the financial statements. On pages 8 through 12 are the notes to the financial statements. They go into a little bit more detail about the financial statements. What I want to concentrate on is page 12 of those, the last 3 notes to the financial statements. For note E, commitments, the district, as of June 30th, had 3 commitments and 3 contracts that have not been finished with Olson Associates. If you read there, it'll show you how much you still have left to pay Olson Associates on those 3 contracts. Note F is a prior period adjustment. As of June 30th, 2016, we made an accrual for payables on a construction contract, and it actually came in approximately $33,000 less than what was recorded that year. And so we are adjusting the prior year's financial statements to show that decrease in expenses. And then note G, which discusses subsequent events. Because the South Beltway contract was not signed by the city until July, after the RTSD's year end, we did not record that liability on the financial statements. However, we are noting here that you are committed now for $10 million for the year end 17-18. And finally, on page 14 is a comparison of the budget to the actual expenses. The actual expenses are on a cash basis. And approximately, you budgeted approximately $4.3 million of revenue. That came in actual numbers of $4.3 million. Not much of a difference there. We also have other information toward the back. On page 16, we have a schedule of accounts with the county treasurer. We also have a schedule of your certificates of deposit. On page 18 is a schedule of your insurance coverage. And on page 19, we have a schedule of your valuations, rates, and assessments. And finally, we have another report on internal controls, and there is one finding that we have, which is the same as the prior year. All we're saying toward the bottom of page 21, or pardon me, we were referring to another report on page 23, and it basically says that we, HPE LLP, prepared the financial statements for the RTSD instead of the RTSD preparing them themselves. And we are required to tell you that we have prepared the financial statements. And we consider that a finding. However, 99.9% of all the audits we do, we give that similar findings. So, any questions?
Questions for Tony? Todd?
My question, going back to that note G that you referenced, given the fact that we are beyond the September 1st, wouldn't it be more accurate to note that the first payment has been made of $10 million?
We could make a payment, we can make a reference to that if you would like. However, we do show that as a commitment.
Right, but we've fulfilled half of it. And so that's where, I mean, I think moving forward, I think for the purposes of the public, making sure that people understand that, I mean, the timings, you know, when we make those payments are important. I mean, if we submit this audit after September 1st and the way it's worded, it kind of, there's some, just a housekeeping matter, I think, if you would accurately reflect that $10 million payment has been made.
We can add that line up. That is no problem at all.
Right.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to testify on this item? If not, we can move on to the next item. Consideration of fiscal year 17-18 budget. Roger.
Okay. Roger Feigert representing the RTSD, and within your packet and on the website was the state statute required budget forms that the RTSD as a political subdivision is required to submit to the state auditor's office. The numbers and everything that's in here are the same and reflect exactly the budget, the draft budget that you approved in June and then reapproved previously in that second meeting in August. So again, these statutory required, this budget along with the levy information has to be filed with the state auditor by September 15th, and we're on board to do that. So we'll just answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Roger? Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the budget.
Point of clarification, I guess, who are we authorizing to sign the budget? Is it both the chair and the executive director? Or does that matter?
In the past, I think it was actually the chair that signed. I haven't typically signed, but I'll follow up with our legal counsel and make sure, Todd.
Well, but that's not required in the motion? Or just do we just need to approve it?
I think if you simply approve the budget and authorize the executive director to secure the necessary signatures and submit that would cover that.
Okay.
I would move that we adopt the budget as outlined and authorize the executive director of the RTSD to obtain the necessary signatures to submit.
Second.
Moved by Todd, seconded by Jane. Discussion. Please call the roll.
Lamb,
Yes.
Riggle,
Yes.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Brinkman,
Yes.
Christensen.
Yes. All right, the next item, Roger, report regarding current budget status.
Yes, pretty briefly, obviously, in your packet was the budget sheet that we typically use for our operating budget and our capital budget. And I would simply note as we're started to this year, we've spent 5% of the operating budget. And well, it says almost 20% of the construction budget, that $10 million that was transferred to the city of Lincoln. constitute most of that. At this point in time, I don't see any issues and don't have any concerns with the current budget numbers and where we are. I would like to go on record thanking the County Treasurer's Office for being on top of things and having the cash ready to transfer to the City of Lincoln in just a matter of a few days. So they did a good job.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Other questions for Roger on this item? Okay, would anyone else like to testify on this item? Then we'll move on to the next item, which is report of project and crossing updates.
Okay, and I'll have a couple of folks come up and help. We'll kind of start with projects first. Chris Humphrey's going to come up. She's the project manager for 33rd and Cornhusker and give an update of kind of where we're on that. While she's doing that, I would make note to the board that BNSF representatives, Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad representatives, will be in Lincoln the end of this month. And we are set up to meet with them and go over things for the RTSD, Lincoln Airport Authority, Lower Platte South NRD, City of Lincoln Parks and Recreation, and City of Lincoln Public Works projects. So we have a full docket of projects to keep working on. So with that, Chris, would you?
Good morning, Chris Humphrey. I'm the RTSD's project manager for the 33rd and Cornhusker project, and I just want to give you a brief update on what we've been doing since we last met in June. We do have a fully executed memorandum of understanding between the RTSD, BNSF, and the Nebraska Department of Transportation. And if you recall, that MOU basically outlines general responsibilities between the three parties regarding items like funding, the general schedule, and then just different responsibilities that each of those parties will be responsible for. Excuse me. We've also recently gone through our consultant selection process for this next phase. We had an RFQ that was sent out, and we received 3 proposals for that. Out of those 3 proposals, we decided to shortlist 2 firms for interview. This was for services regarding a sub-area planning study, NEPA, which is the environmental component of the project, and preliminary engineering. So we held interviews recently, and we selected the Olson Associates Benish team. That team will be led by Olson Associates, and so our next steps are to be negotiating a contract with them for the first phase of those services, which will be sub-area planning with components of environmental and preliminary engineering for different alternatives for the roadway network through there. So our goal is to have that contract negotiated by December, in which time we'd be taking that contract in front of you for board action. So
Okay.
With that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for Chris? Short and sweet, is this project on schedule?
This project is on schedule. We were planning to have a contract in place by December for you guys to take action on, and so we're well on the way for
Very
that. I think we'll meet that schedule.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you, guys.
Sarah Hartzell from the Parks Department is here to give a quick update on the Jamaica Trail North connection in South Lincoln. So.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
I have some little visuals here for you that I'll share up on the overhead as well.
Thank you.
Just an update on this project. This is the connection between the Jamaica North and the Rock Island Railroad, which are on that first figure identified in the lavender color, Jamaica North running north and south, and Rock Island running through the Densmore Park. The green line represents the general alignment of this project. We have 2 options at this point. One is a diagonal crossing, and one is a straight across crossing with a ramp then that would go down to the Jamaica North. The 2 brochures that I handed out to you have some prettier pictures of those 2 possibilities. This is the one that we're calling option 1 that comes straight across from Densmore Park, which is right over here. You can see the ball fields in that picture. Straight across the railroad, and then a ramp that's basically a bridge that comes down into the park and connects with Jamaica North. And the other is a diagonal that stays on that alignment, utilizes an existing railroad bridge that's currently blocked off from access but is structurally sound and could be incorporated into this project, and then follows out on that alignment. The Olson Associates engineers have been working on these materials. This was all done through a contract with with the Nebraska Trails Foundation and the Great Plains Trails Network. They are major partners in this, fundraising for about 30% of the cost of the project, and these brochures as well as a video were produced for them so that they can start their major fundraising campaign. They already have several fundraisers or funding sources secured, which is wonderful. We will be working on a engineering contract this winter and get our engineers on board. I'm currently working with Public Works, Susie Philippi, to get a interlocal agreement between the city and the RTSD for this work and transfer of the funding, and we'll be also having a fact sheet put together for that as well.
Questions for Sarah? Jane?
So, Sarah, did I miss something? Because I kept looking at the drawings. Did you settle on a choice, or you're getting cost for both choices?
I think we're working on costs for both choices. Really, the engineering as we go forward with because this was conceptual engineering, and so they've done quite a bit of work on what they think would be involved as far as retaining walls and how long the bridge would be, and they've gotten us a pretty solid estimate. But really, as we go through the preliminary engineering and they do a much finer job of engineering, we'll get a better idea of cost. They have reworked this over and over, and I think we're pretty close. I doubt if we would have much variation.
And who makes the final decision on which choice?
I think it'll depend on a couple of things. It'll depend on cost, impacts to the park, input from the public, and then how does this work with our future trails plan? Are we setting ourselves up better for future connections by choosing one or the other?
I guess my question is, who makes that final decision?
The Parks Department would be responsible for that, and we would bring it to you as well.
So I have a question on option 2. I don't know, is this a conceptual, or is this a actual existing bridge that can be modified? It's on option 2 at the diagonal. Is that the picture that you're on?
Back page.
Yeah, back page. Is that the conceptual, or is that the actual existing bridge that can be modified?
That is still conceptual there.
Oh, okay.
It's trying to show that as you come out of Densmore, you would have to start the covered bridge portion before you hit the railroad right-of-way, just because of the slope there. So that's that covered bridge. Sorry, I don't have it set up very well there. That covered bridge portion. This is where the existing trail curves and heads off into Densmore Park, showing the extension that would be planned to the west and south.
Todd?
So if the Parks Department were to proceed with option number 1, which would be the straight across, what would happen to the existing structure over the rail?
Yeah, we've talked about that, and one idea, because that existing, I guess you could call it a berm, but the old railroad alignment is planned for a future alignment for a trail. That bridge still has some utility to it. We could either create it as kind of a ramp up to that alignment, and then that would be an overlook so that people could go out on that bridge, and we'd maybe have a little widened area at the east end of it. Maybe it'd help if I... This doesn't show it very well, but to have just leave that bridge in place, it's something where you could sit up there and you could watch people going underneath the trail. You could look out over the park. It could be just kind of a scenic overlook there. We at one point talked about taking a bridge from the platform, this platform here, and bridging over to that, and then continuing along that bridgeway. That would be another possibility. This option 1 is starting to look more and more like it's going to be more expensive than the option 2, and probably not set us up as well for the future. So I think the diagonal one is probably the preferred at this time. At first, it was less preferred because the cost was quite a bit higher, but as they've looked at the retaining walls and that ramp to go down, it looks like it's starting to even out a little bit more.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Just a couple of quick other updates. I don't know how many of you saw the article. It was in Sunday's paper. It was an article about the unfortunate incident in West Lincoln and the referencing that the RTSD has been looking at a potential track abandonment and a relocation of that Hastings line through Hobson Yard. That'll be on our agenda with the railroad. I think I've reported in the past, the railroad has a number of projects, and they've asked for which projects are priority. And at this point in time, we've placed a priority on the 33rd and Cornhusker, and then the Hobson Yard relocation as a second priority. We're still gathering information. A lot of it needing to come from the railroad itself on cost information to make them whole to upgrade the existing line and build a new line through Hobson Yard. We're just continuing to work on that. We still owe the public a letter or a newsletter of sorts out to the different associations in West Lincoln that had been apprised previously of where we were on the quiet zone. So we need to update and get that information out. The other project that we've been working on is West Woodstruck and straightening out the alignment of that poorly aligned county road. We are trying to finalize costs for a number of different options and continuing to work with the Nebraska Department of Transportation and weighing options between an alternative that might just straighten out the road and the cost would be totally the city or the counties, and the RTSD could share in that, versus some other options that might have the actual closure of some crossings, some relocations of the roadway that might also then allow the railroad and certainly the Nebraska Department of Transportation to cost share in those alternatives as well. So that's also on our agenda. The other project that we've been working on, or I've been working with the city is currently kind of in its final design of Pine Lake Road from east of 56th Street over to Highway 2. That includes a crossing of the OPPD lines. And one of the things that we've been working on is when you have an active railroad track, but it doesn't have many trains running on it. And that's what the OPPD line is from 56th Street on east. It is an active line. They could run trains on it any day, but they aren't running trains on a regular basis. And we have been discussing, as the city or the county would do a project, does all of the new safety equipment need to be installed all at the very beginning, which sometimes is an increased cost, but you're not really using it because the trains are not there. And that conversation is going well at this point, that we may be able to phase some of those improvements and defer some of those costs on into the future, trying to save some of those tax dollars. It doesn't mean the equipment doesn't need to be there, but it could be deferred to a little bit later. Would expect conversations to continue, and perhaps there would be an interlocal agreement that would be on the December meeting, laying out some cost sharing and some dollars that could be transferred to the city for their right-of-way or engineering on that project. That's really all I had on projects. Some updates on crossings. A year ago in December, I had in the board meeting, I'd indicated that the city and the county are responsible for maintaining appropriate markings approaching railroad crossings. And the county at that time was working with NDOT on a federal aid project. That project was slow in coming forward. I've received an additional letter from the county. That project, I think, has been let now, and maybe it addresses 10 crossings within the county. And we would be looking at a local cost share of around $2,000, which would be about 10% of the project cost. And in the past, we have paid, the RTSD has paid that local share out of our crossing improvements portion of the budget. So I will continue to work with the county engineer when we receive an invoice for that. Likewise, I would expect the city to be analyzing and perhaps giving us a list of crossings in the city itself that might need crossing or marking improvements and updates in the spring that could also come out of that line item in that budget. We continue to get a number of complaints from the citizens of crossings, condition repair, 22nd Street near Lincoln Lumber, Y Street near Nebco. Fortunately, I was able in the last month to reestablish conversations with Don Hamill and working with OL&B and Lincoln Lumber to try to improve those crossings. I did note that somebody come in and put some temporary asphalt on the 22nd Street crossing, which will make that a little bit better in the interim. We still have complaints on Union Pacific line out on Northwest 12th. Continue to work with those folks. And just recently got some complaints on the condition of the industry spur tracks that are on J Street just west of the City Hall facility here. And at this point, just working with City Public Works to try to get some temporary repairs in there and make those better for folks to go across. The only other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to show you and the public some updates that we've made to the RTSD interactive map that is on the website. Anybody can go to the RTSD website, and over on the right-hand side there is an interactive map. I already have this one, I think, called up. You click on that interactive map, and what you've got is all of the railroad tracks throughout the city. You can zero in on a crossing, make those a little bit bigger. I'll go down to 33rd Street. You click on that crossing, it searches a little bit. Come on, come on, come on. Go to the arrow and go across, and then on the website itself then is a complete inventory and listing of who is the owner, where that is, the mileposts, what kind of material is there, and if it happens at the bottom of that list that there's more information, you can go into the website and we have pictures showing those crossings, both looking as you're driving across on the street and looking up and down the railroad tracks themselves. So the public can go and look at some of those. There's also information in there as far as the emergency number that you can call the railroad to fix those. We will continue to work on these. Eventually, I'd like to be able to link each of those crossings to the FRA inventory sheets that Washington keeps up and has that. But just another opportunity for folks to see what we're doing, and we'll continue to try to update those and keep that up so folks can see what's out there and maybe have a better, when they call in sometimes, they've got a complaint about a crossing and they're not sure exactly where it is, who it belongs to, and with that information there, I think we're more transparent, more information out there. With that, I would answer any questions you might have on projects or crossing updates.
Jane.
So Roger, is this interactive map something new on the website?
It's new in that it's working.
Okay, good.
I've worked very hard with city's technology services engineering, and they have updated the map and got all this additional information. It took us a while to get the updated information. The old map was there, but it wasn't working. So just over the last couple of months, it's up and working.
That's great.
Todd?
So Roger, you mentioned that you said that we will be meeting with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe representatives.
Yes.
Who's the we? I mean, is it RTSD? Is there the chair, the vice chair? Who's all involved in those discussions?
Myself, for sure, and I will have an agenda out. The intent was the RTSD facilitates the meeting and tries to assist. The airport authority will be there with their manager and engineer, county engineer. Lower Platte South manager. Typically, I've not invited, but certainly could, members from the board to set in. We couldn't have more than 2 of you there at the time. Certainly, I'll make sure that the board members have a copy of the agenda and the things that we want to cover. We've only got a couple of hours and we have a lot of projects. The goal is to help BNSF make decisions and get that information back to the political subdivisions so their consultants can make progress.
Well, I would just think that at least one elected official from the RTSD board
Okay.
should be involved.
Okay. I also try to meet, and we haven't had one for a while, Union Pacific comes in and meets with the Nebraska Department of Transportation, and I've typically been able to shoehorn and get myself at least invited to that meeting as well. We don't have as much interaction with Union Pacific, but I'll make sure the board is aware of any of those meetings. Okay.
Okay, other questions? Thank you, Roger. Would anyone else like to comment or make a statement on this agenda item? Very good. Are there any other non-agenda items from members of the board here? Any public comments? I will make a...
Tony Drina with HBE LLP. I didn't want to forget, the audit went very well, and I wanted to thank Roger and Liz and Amy and also Candace and Meredith. I don't want to forget them. Whenever we had a question, we got answers very shortly, almost in a matter of minutes, so I just wanted to make that mention.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Anyone else? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jennifer, seconded by Jane. Please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. Yes.
we are adjourned.